Welcome back to session number 2. It's a continuation of passing the baton and asking the panel up here some questions. Does anybody have any questions that they have thought of yet?
Well, I guess different ones of you have done different things in different seasons of your life, so that would be cool to hear about. Kind of what that's like transitioning from one role to another role, and just kind of how the Lord met you in that and equipped you for different seasons of ministry.
Could you tell what Sam was asking, because I can't hear? What was the question?
So just asking about they've done different roles throughout their lives, so like different seasons of ministry and how the Lord prepared you for that transition and that. Yes.
You can give us a young perspective.
Okay. I was just talking about this with Ben literally just 5 minutes ago. One of the things I was saying is I have a passion for local church ministry. That's where I served for previous 8 years in the local church. I'm gifted, I know one of my gifts is shepherding and whatnot, and so I did that, and I did it with my whole heart for some years. And I had never done camp ministry, as a lot of you know. And so the transition there, I was talking to Ben about how God is so amazing, where He'll allow you to see something, later on that you didn't even realize. A lot of times we find our identity in the thing that we do, and instead of identity, our identity being in Christ. And so for me, I was more passionate in who I was as a leader in the local church, as a shepherd of the people that I love and care for, at times than I was passionate about my identity in Christ. And so a few years ago, if you would have told me that God was going to take me out of serving in the local church and to put me in camp, something that I've never done before, I would have said, I don't want to do that. But because my identity was in that which I, the Lord allowed me to do, but that which I found, that which I was gifted in and found a passion for or whatnot. Well, fast forward, the Lord began to deal with me even before coming to Sudan about, no, your identity is in me, your commitment and devotion is to me. So wherever I put you, then you are to do it with your whole heart. So transition can be tough, and serving in a functioning in a role that's different than what you're used to can be tough. But long as He's the focus and He's the, He's the one that we're committed to, then I believe we can do what it is that we need to do.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I consider myself to be a troubleshooter. I was going to say troublemaker, but my wife would agree. I am equipment, electrical, machinery oriented. If it's mechanical, I'll take it. And that's kind of the way I take life. It doesn't matter what the problem is, I'll happily engage in it. And I don't have to consider that something I've met before or something I'm familiar with. So it's just a natural, I think it's a God-given gift that I'm able to just run into whatever situation is there. We served in Brazil, and I went there as a technician. Two-way radio was the primary function. But we're on a new center where there's building going on, very few people, nothing for us to live in. We moved into an aviation storage shed. That was our home for the 2 years we were there, almost 2 years. But when someone needed something done, it didn't matter what it was. That just gravitated to that and did it. So I built chairs for the school, for the missionary kids. I built kitchen cabinets for one of the houses that 4 single ladies were building. They're in their tribe, they're in their tribal house. When they come back to the center, they have a house to live in. So it was a very unusual house for 4 single gals. It was their own little apartment and shared kitchen living areas. It didn't matter what it was, it just had to be done, it was done. Well, then we went to Nigeria and it's the same thing. So I'm doing communications again in Nigeria, 25 stations all over the country, talking to people every day. Got one translator who's working on 3 languages at the same time, and he wants to make cassette tapes of new translated material that he can distribute to people to hear and see if they're getting truth expressed, if they're understanding their own language. And so he would send me over the radio these recordings that he had made, and I would make cassette tapes for him, stacks of them, send them back out. He'd give them to boys on a bicycle, and they'd take a bicycle out to the villages and have people listen to them. So I did that kind of stuff for him. Then when this building project came along, we had a missionary from Switzerland that started the building project, and just a few weeks in, he left the mission on short notice and was gone. We made a quick transition. I said, we'll take the project on and do it. There wasn't anybody else to do it. There's no other builder in the country out to build it either. So we moved on short notice. I had 1 day with Walter on the job, and then I never saw him again. He was still in the country, but he was working for another company. So I jumped into a project with 40 men. I'd never managed a crew like that before. A project that was already underway, and got our baptism by fire, as they say. We worked long hours, 7 days a week. Got to know an awful lot of people in business, in the community, in the town. It's a good-sized city, Jos, in Nigeria. Most of the mission agencies have their headquarters in Jos because it's on a plateau about 7,000 feet, and the climate is 70-something degrees every year, year-round, and just a wonderful place to be. And so that's why all the headquarters were there, so lots of people there. But that was a total new aspect of life for us. After we finally finished that, Sylvia said life would never be the same. And it did, it totally changed us because of the involvement. But now we're in a church in Dayton, Tennessee, an hour down the road. If there's something that needs to be done there, I do it. I build cabinets for the church, I build pulpits for the church. Right now we're working on a fire alarm system that's been a real problem for several years because we have multiple service entrances on our electricity, and that creates ground loop problems for electronic equipment that nobody can solve. So that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter what it is, God puts it in front of me, I'll just do it. And so the teaching that I got into over 30 years ago, started teaching adults, happened because, as I said to my electrician friend in Kentucky, God kicked the ladder out from under me. I fell 10 feet, crushed a heel, and Dr. Rutterbush said, well, you'll be in bed 12 weeks until your heel reforms bones and you start to walk again. But he said, you're self-employed, they heal faster. So I was on a roof the next Saturday. Not quite healed, but we got there. But I enjoy doing what people need, so I consider myself to be a helper, a help, problem solver, someone just to do whatever comes along. But that being on my back in bed for most of 12 weeks resulted in my getting in deeply into the Word, reading a lot, and even found my life verse in Isaiah, which says, the bed is too short to stretch out on, and the blankets are too narrow to roll up in. It's in there, 28-25. And we had a 2-story house, and our bedroom's upstairs. It was a crushed heel, I was not going upstairs. So I'm sleeping on the sleeper couch in the living room. And you know those things that kill your back? If you've ever slept one, and you have, right through the middle it's got that bar and it just cuts you in two. So I turned sideways. The bed's too short. Sylvia put a chair at the end with a cushion on it, that was for my feet. And then she got the single bed blankets from downstairs in the house to us to share on this double bed. And so we're fighting over blankets all night until the day I found the verse. The bed is too short, the blankets are too narrow. So we laughed. We laughed, but life is good. God takes care of us. He puts us where He wants us. He lets us do what we're supposed to do. We just do it. So out of that came the teaching that I do today, because I turned to the Word and I deep in the Word and I study the Word. I still consider myself a student. I don't have a degree in anything. I've never been taught to be a teacher, but I dearly love the Word and love to teach it, and so that's what I do.
I think for me, when Jeff and I got married, he was finishing up Bible school, and so as soon as he graduated, we joined Camp Nathaniel Scripture Memory Mountain Mission, and it's been our only ministry our whole life, basically. And so it's been my whole life. You know, I was raised as a mission kid, and I worked summer staff for I don't know how many summers, 8, 9, 10 summers, and so it's just been my whole life. And so when I met with my discipleship girls this summer, I said, you know, I know what you're going through. I've done every single job you've done. You know, I've been in the dish room, I've been in the kitchen, I've counseled kids, I've worked in team lab, I worked everything except horses. I've never done horses, so they kind of scare me. And they didn't have horses when I was a summer staff, so I never got into that job. But then moving forward to member care, you know, and I'm looking at, I was the office manager for years, you know, and then a good chunk of the time that we've been there, I was a mom raising 3 kids, you know, and so I tell our young ones that come in, I call them young, you know, they're in their 20s, and I tell them, you know, we've been where they've been. We came as a couple, no kids, we've had 3 kids, we've raised them, we've sent them all off, they're all grown and grown now, so we've lived on support all our whole married life, so we know where they are and what they're going through, and so I think that helps us be able to help others. So whatever experiences you have in the you know, transitions, if you want to call them that, God can use every one of those for you to be able to bless somebody else somewhere down the road.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, Daniel, we always hear about passing the baton from us old people backwards. Gary, how does it look from your side? What's the couple of things that you could give us some advice?
Yes. I tell you, I have a lot of friends and peers who have been in my seat of receiving the baton. And I'll say some of the challenges of it is, you know, you'll hear someone said earlier that, I believe it was Jeff, that, you know, it's the younger generation, they need this, that, and that. I love the way Jeff went on and explained, you know, how he explained after that. But most people, you know, from what I hear, you know, there are a lot of older generation people, when they hear that, they say, yeah, but in a negative tone. Yeah. and they'll chuckle or whatnot. And that's been one of the struggles for, I know, some peers of mine. Vernon has been very gracious and very understanding and patient, and he's given me a lot of flexibility and freedom to be me. And so that's not in this case at all, and thank God for that. But one of the things that I hear is those who are passing the baton, they have a hard time, first of all, letting it go. But second of all, allowing the one who they're passing it to be who God uniquely designed them to be. A lot of times they want them to be, you know, themselves. And miss the understanding of, no, God designed you the way He designed you, and they have a Lord and they have a God who designed them the way He designed them. And so, and that becomes a struggle, and part of it is, and for me, I understand it, you know, although I haven't been in those shoes, I understand someone who has sat in a role, labored and given and sacrificed for years and years and years and years, of failing and trying new things and making adjustments and all of that, finally finding a thing that worked for them, just for someone else to come in behind them and do it differently. It's tough, and I get it. But at the same time, it's tough for that person to come in and beat you and to succeed, trying to be someone who they're not. So from my perspective, the challenge is, for me, I told Vernon, hey, I came in to be the assistant director, to learn from you and all of that. I want to honor the legacy that is here. But part of what was expected of me from different ones on our board and on our staff team, one of the things that they were saying in the beginning, as soon as we got here, my wife can attest to this, Sedina is in need of change. And sometimes for a person in my role, the pressure of needing to bring change could also be a challenge. Especially when you're someone like me, where I don't like going anywhere and trying to bring any change for at least a couple years. Because there's so much to learn. You don't really know anything. You don't know much, at least, about context and the needs and history of that place. And so for me, it's about spending that time just learning and taking in and being a sponge and all of that before you try to influence change in any way. But sometimes you're needed. Your perspective is needed, to help move the thing along. So it's also the challenge of balancing, how much is too much and how much is not enough, and so, but those are some of the things, from what I've heard and even my own experience that can be a challenge. And then the other thing is, from my role, from my seat, most times when you have someone who's supposed to be there and who God has sent, a lot of times they're going to come in nervous and scared, but excited and anxious even. And just ready to, all right, what can I do? What can I do to, what projects do you have for me? And just excited and just ready to just go running because it's new, it's fresh and all of that. And so the challenge there is slow it down, take your time, and just see what the Lord will do. So I hope that answers your question there.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions at this time? Kind of reverse the roles now. For those that are in the process of passing or have passed the baton, how do you deal with the passing? Is it easy to let go? And what if you see something different in their life than what you were hoping for passing the baton? How do you process that?
Well, as Gary was talking, I was thinking of watching the Olympics last week. A couple things that you notice. Each person runs their own leg. And each one of them has this little different style of running. Some of them took off and ran really hard first, and then they leveled it out further out. Some of them took off kind of level and then they just burned it out at the end. But the other thing you notice is the passing zone is a defined area. If you go outside of that defined area, you're disqualified. And we had an American U.S. team that was disqualified because they didn't pass the baton in the defined area. And the defined area can be different, but there is a defined area. And you have the baton and you're passing it and it's in the other person's hand, and then it's no longer in your hand. And when you let go of it, you need to let go of it. And that's, I think, the big thing that's going to be a challenge. Yeah, it's not always easy to let go, but the Lord's been preparing me and I've been asking for it, and so when the Lord answers the prayer, then you've got to do your part and let Him go. And I think that's probably the big thing. How do you deal with it when folks don't do it the way you would do it? Well, you're going to have to just say, yes, sir. I mean,
You'll have that recorded, right? That's recorded up there?
we can scratch it.
Any other thoughts, or?
I'll just say that, as Beth said, our path started when we were just 23-year-olds, and coming out of Bible school. And so our transitions have all happened within the ministry. We don't know any different, really. But that doesn't mean there weren't transitions, right? So, I started out a recreational director and pool manager, and learning from Mr. Murr.
Yes.
And he teaches, all these different things. And our mission, I think, has a pretty good heritage, good tradition as far as trying to teach people that come in and do those things. And then being the camp director for almost 20 years, and just kind of realizing that, that passion of, getting up at 6 or 7 in the morning and going to bed at midnight for 8 weeks in a row gets a little bit wearing, right? And you're not waking up with the same juice that you woke up with, and you feel that, and you're like, wait a minute, something. And finding that, just like, what, there's somebody that can do this at a higher level and better than what I'm able to. What I'm just really not that I wanted to, but you're just not able to anymore. That's hard. That mental, your mind says yes, but your body says And so that's always a difficult thing as you know the reality of what that is. And then, like you said, just being able to see that, there's a lot of things that you put into a program over the course of 18 years or 20 years, and you've seen it build, and you've seen it grow, and you've seen all the positives. And there is a level of when you pass that over to somebody, you say, now here's how you do it. We've got this. But just like you said, there's other people that come with maybe a little different twist to it or something. And I've always been willing, and I think this is important. We never want to get into because we've always done it that way. That's terrible. Terrible. I hope I'm willing to defend why I did it, right? If somebody comes to me and says, why did you do it that way? I better have a good answer. Right. I better have something to say and say, here's how we came to that conclusion, this, and this. And when you start to make a change in a program, and Gary, if Vernon's not already told you this, I'm telling you this. What happens is that change often impacts or influences 2 or 3 or 4 other things. Yeah. The change itself wasn't a bad thing. It's the impact that it had on 2 or 3 or 4 other things that you thought, oh, wait a minute, because I changed this, now this is different, this, and that's not too cool. But you were so focused on the initial change, you didn't take time to see the impact that was going to have on other things. And so I would just say, I'm not against change, just make sure that you're thinking about the impact that it's going to have in different areas of the ministry before you pull the trigger on it, because a lot of times it will, and it does. So that's
we had a conversation about that this week.
Okay. I'd like a little more involvement with the audience here. Any thoughts, any questions, or any feedback? All right, another question we have is, in our previous session with our speaker, he spoke on gifts and the importance of them. And each one of us is tasked with a certain gift. It may be the gift of giving, it may be the gift of teaching, or whatever the gift is. When you're passing the baton, you may not see that same gift in the next person, or when you're receiving the baton, you may not see that you got the same gift that the other person had. How does that affect in the process?
I'm a very highly organized, compartmentalized person. So if I turn something over to somebody, and I've had to turn a lot of things that I do over to other people, the younger generation, and thank goodness for them, because I don't want to have to do it all forever. So I have turned over a responsibilities, like this camp scheduling and all that kind of stuff. But it's hard when somebody's not as organized as I think I am, and so it's hard to even, be involved in it. It's easier just to step back rather than try to keep my hands in it because it's not done the way that I always did it. So I tend to step back some and let them do it. And it still gets done and it's fine. It's just my organizational brain doesn't allow me to be chaotic, I guess. So it's difficult.
But I think we've been blessed that we've got people, God has really brought in people that, He has the person. And sometimes it gets back to the whole point of, us as an organizations being willing to, maybe not jump on the first person who's what I call warm and willing, right? They're breathing, they're willing, they're warm, all right, you're in. And we can sometimes might get too quick about taking those people and not saying, wait a minute, that really doesn't fit you very well. Making sure that they're aware of that they may not fit, and then saying, is this something that you want to try to tackle? Not that you couldn't do it, but understanding that this might not be at your skill set. This job that we've got may not be, exactly what, but that doesn't, and we've seen this in ministry before, that doesn't mean that God can't take and give that person a passion for that and that they can't do it well. I sure wouldn't disqualify somebody, but I do think it's important to be aware that, hey, this might not work. This might not fit you great, and just be open and honest about what that is. But we've seen enough people who didn't look like they were skill setted for something who just took it and ended up being a diamond in the rough kind of thing where we're like, boy, I didn't see that coming. That was something. So we can't be too quick to disqualify, but also be realistic about what that skill set might look like.
I think a statement that I've heard for years fits in this area, and that is God doesn't often call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And so if the person is called to that ministry, He's either going to give the gifts to that person or He's going to give him a person that's gifted in that area. And so sometimes I have some gifts that Gary doesn't have. Gary has some gifts that I don't have. And so those gifts may be what the ministry needs to move forward. And my gifts may be able to support for a short period of time, and God will give him a person that has similar gifts to be able to carry those roles that I've carried. So I've come to a point, I know intellectually, and I'm learning in my heart that, it's not going to be a person like me. And, there are times I look and I say, my goodness, I wish there had been somebody else to do this, because sometimes you feel like this area or that area fell down because I wasn't strong enough in that area. And in some cases, I didn't pull along the right person to be able to get that covered as well as it was. So I think the concept of God qualifying the called is what we need to look at when we're looking at transition.
Okay. I'm running out of questions myself, so do you have a question there?
If the person does not have the gift to decide, I'm trying to remember your question in the first place. Does not have a gift that I can pass down to him or anything. Can we teach structure, integrity, commitment, loyalty, and critical thinking? I'm just wondering about those values that our nation seems to be crumbling in, and if the gift is not compatible or whatever, what about those values?
I think John Maxwell says you can't teach character. And it's something like that he says. You need a person of character more more than you, because there are skills you can teach. And so the integrity and some of those things are critical, in bringing a person in. And, that's one of the things I believe, our board did a good job in vetting the character of Brother Gary. One of the things that has helped Gary and I in our relationship is our common relationship with my son, Daniel, and he had built quite a relationship. And so when things started moving, that Gary was a possibility, Daniel made sure I knew a lot of Gary's good qualities before I ever met him. The things that he appreciated about Gary, I knew about him. And from what Gary has told me, a similar thing happened as far as Daniel sharing with him what he felt were strengths and what, and why I needed help. So our common relationship has actually helped build our relationship because of that. And so I have confidence in Brother Gary's character. And so I believe, and from my experience with him, then I am personally convinced of his character, and his ability to learn the skills has, I told him what we needed to do at camp, and I sat back and watched him do it, and he'd get to a hard spot and he'd come and say, well, what about this? And we'd talk about it, and either he would come up with a solution or I would share something that would trigger something for him. And so, it was what's that? Watch me and do this, but he didn't get to watch me do much. I guess staff training week, I kind of took a little more of the lead, but then once we got into camp, it was, his baby, and he started bossing me around. He gave me a job, so I couldn't, it's just, no, anyway. Exactly, well, he put me in a place where I wouldn't be in his way, yeah.
Just to be clear, values, a value like critical thinking, loyalty, they cannot be taught. They cannot be taught.
Generally, they cannot be taught. The Holy Spirit can do them in the life of a person. But
Okay.
Another question is, what we saw, like with what happened with the leadership in ANAM, that someone was really wanting to be involved, but due to circumstances, it could be health or any other reason, they may have to step down. So how do you deal with passing the baton and having to pick it back up again?
I'm hoping not to have to do anything. Lord, keep you up.
I can speak on that some.
Go ahead.
When I called Vernon, when I heard there was 2 couples retiring from camp, I called and said, I'll come over and work 2 or 3 days a week, thinking I'm going to answer telephones, work in the mailing department like I did 40-some years ago. And Vernon said, oh, I have a place I can put you. I'll put you in the business office. Now, I have a degree in office administration, but that's business office, money, there's a little bit of difference there. So Carol had 3 days with me to show me and try to teach me a lot of what she was doing. She was passing that baton to me. Now, a lot of what I've learned in the last 2.5, 3 years has been my trial and error. And it's going to be that way. But she tried, and Vernon's there, and he's helping me in areas that I need help in. So he's passed the baton to. So I have batons coming at me in 2 or 3 different ways. But, if you've got a willing heart, and Sedine's always been my home since I came here in '65. And I've been in and out in different areas. But when I left, when the opportunity came up for me to come back, I have thanked the Lord so many times for bringing me home. And so that maybe it's a different field. Maybe we're getting side batons and not,
just from your own personal experience, do you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to share as far as holding the baton, passing it, or receiving it? Or
I think one thing that's very important, again, mentioned earlier, identity in Christ is very important because it'll help us remember that we don't own any of it. It doesn't belong to us. We get to steward whatever. We get to steward it while the baton is in our hand. But ultimately, it belongs to Christ. And that we're doing it for Him. And so, when the challenges arise, hey, doing it for Him. And the days that we feel great, He gets the glory because we're doing it for Him. And so, as long as we understand our place in it, we're a steward, we're not an owner.
I'll just throw out this out. This is going to sound less spiritual or business-like. In ministries like ours, you don't have extra people sitting in the sideline waiting to be, step into one of these roles in the business office or bookkeeping, as director of camp or something like that. And so we have worked really hard at having very clear and defined job descriptions. And of course, anytime you come and do one of your 5-year reviews, that's one of the things we look at is a very clear job description. And I'll tell you, it does a couple of things. One, if someone ever has to step into your role, and we don't know, this dear lady just a couple of weeks ago, I called her and she said, yeah, sorry, I was out last week because I had a stroke. My father had a stroke around the same time and he's not doing nearly so well. But you think about something like that can happen just unexpectedly, and how many batons potentially could drop if it's not clearly spelled out what we do. And so to have your job clearly defined, clearly written out, so that someone, and for me, it's a part of our responsibility in discipleship and preparing ourselves to pass a baton, is that we've done everything we can to make it easy for the person that replaces us. And so in my office, it just recently started another layer of not only having a job description, but keeping it updated, but also it is now in some of our project management software that all of our administrators have. And so it has everything they're expected to do on a weekly basis, everything on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, and annual basis. And it is a reminder to all of our administrators of the things that they need to be doing. But it's not a dead document, like sometimes a job description can become. It's alive, and so you're like, you know what, I've started doing this now. I've taken this on this responsibility. There have been times after 12 years of being a source of light where there were certain things that were not being done because nobody told, the previous person didn't tell the next person. And I've stepped into a situation a few times where I'm like, this is clearly in a job description, all right, but they haven't looked at it closely. And it's like, I thought someone else was doing it. Well, it hasn't been getting done. And thankfully, it wasn't anything extremely major, but it was, if it's not important, you probably should make a job description anyway, so it's apparently necessary. And so my encouragement is, that's the best thing you can do for running your organization, and particularly like in ministries like camp ministry, where you just have this constant turnover, with young people that come in and out, and they want to serve for a few years, and they don't know, what the Lord wants them to do the rest of their life. They just know right now this is what the Lord, has put on their heart, and we can fight that, we can resist that, particularly those of us that thought we were going to die on a mission field somewhere, we were going to be buried there, and that's how I saw myself in ministry. And when I started recruiting some of the younger people, they're like, I might be here a couple of years, and so it's okay, we just got to embrace what we have. But the point is to make it as easy as possible for the people that are going to be coming along, maybe sooner than we might even expect.
Yeah.
And so it's a really good practice to get in the habit of making sure you could be able to, on a piece of paper, describe your job. Someone can pick up if you didn't have the ability to communicate.
Very good point, thank you. I remember back whenever I was in the service, I had a couple of job requirements that there was nothing written down, and so I knew what to do, but if I had to train somebody else, or if I got sick and they had to pick it up, there was nothing on paper, and so we had to build together a job description list of this is what you do, this is how you do it, this is when you do it, and it's very much the same way in ministry, so it's a very good point, thank you. Is there any other questions or anything, other feedback? Or I don't really have any more questions, so.
If nobody has any more questions, I'm going to ask Ron. Ron's going to do a presentation for Source of Light. We were going to do it later, but we got time now. And we're going to back him up to the free time. So he's got 16 minutes. Okay? So thank you all. Very good session.
Well, this one will be a little bit easier since I do this regularly. This switch on. You left it. Good. You probably didn't tell Mary to turn it off. Put that in the job description. Turn off laser remote after. You know, I mean, it's silly, but you know, next time someone goes to use this, the battery's going to be dead. You know, and you know, Warren's not getting any younger. Vernon, I mean, look at me, I'm forgetting people's names. Vernon's not getting any younger, he'll forget it. So, see? And by the way, I've entered into a new stage in life, and that is hearing aids. And for a few years now, the doctors have been telling me that there's a lot of research now about early onset dementia and so forth. And my wife was kind of like, let's invest in the money, you know. She said, I'm kind of hoping you're here to take care of me and not the other way around, you know, when we get old. So anyway, it's a little disorienting, you know, particularly now when I'm singing and doing music. So excuse me every once in a while when I seem a little bewildered because, you know, things are messing with me sometimes. And so anyway, which will be fun next week. I might just have to totally take them out because I'll be preaching next weekend. This time I'll be doing a pastor's conference in Mozambique for about 300 pastors. And so it'll be I'll probably just have to take the stupid things out. You know, it's going to be annoying. But anyway, so I talked about ANAM, and Source of Light has been a member missionist of ANAM for a very long time. You've seen us here before, and I'm not going to go through everything. Most of you, there isn't anybody really in the room that's not familiar with us. A lot of you are familiar with the literature side of things, but sometimes people are surprised that we're also a mission agency. And of course you can see what our mission statement, vision is, but I tell people, and it's interesting because I've been, for the majority of my ministry, I've been a pastor and church planter. Yet at the same time, the very focus of all of my ministries have always been discipleship. Because discipleship is the Great Commission, and that's really what my passion is. And that's not against any other ministry. And I believe every ministry ought to be trying to accomplish the Great Commission, but everybody will say they're doing discipleship. But sometimes I run into ministry and I'm not quite sure that's what their eventual goal is because they don't seem to be getting around to it. I've been a church planter for, as I mentioned, the majority of my life. And it's interesting, you can start a church and not carry out the Great Commission. Isn't that a shame? But it's happening. In fact, most of the churches in America aren't carrying out the Great Commission. I had a donor recently say, I really give to the ministry of Source of Light because I have a hard time supporting the ministry of my local church. And it's a big Southern Baptist church near me. And they want to build a $2 million building. And he said, my church has baptized one person last year. One person. They want to spend $2 million building another building. And he says, I have a hard time justifying it. It's a good church. I'm fed there, but I'm not sure we're carrying out the Great Commission. It's interesting because you can do, and we kind of hit, Billy's been hitting on this the last couple of days, you can do evangelism and not carry out the Great Commission. It's happening. That's what's ironic about this thing called ministry, is people are out there doing it, and it's like they're spinning their wheels. They're not accomplishing the Great Commission. It's why everything that we do at Source of Light, and Phil will tell you, Ben will tell you, Dan will tell you, it comes up every time we do some kind of training. Anytime we have to approve a project, anytime we're looking at developing something new, my question is, how is this going to help us carry out the Great Commission? All right? It's a good idea, but you better be able to demonstrate for me how it's going to be able to carry out the Great Commission to make disciples. And so if you don't remember anything else about what Source of Light does, we do develop and disciple, distribute Bible resources, church planting, evangelism. It's interesting. When I first came to Source of Light, in our bigger mission statement, it had this fifth category, which is edify believers, and I thought, that would kind of be assumed, but there's a lot of our people who will never be able to, a lot of the people that we minister to who will never get to a church. And we're starting to see that increasingly. And so they'll never be able to be put in a church building or church plant or something like that, which I believe is the ultimately the best way that somebody is continually discipled, all right? But they're in jail. They may never get out. They're Muslim, and they're in a community of Muslims where there aren't other Christians to go to. There isn't a church to go to. Maybe their faith isn't strong enough for them to go to a church, because it will mean certain death in certain parts of the world. So anyway, I left edify believers because that's actually a specific thing we're starting to address as a need to make discipleships. But if you forget everything else that I say, Source of Light's here to make disciples. These are just a handful of ministries that Source of Light is involved in, and you've seen, you're perhaps familiar with most of that, but these are some of the tools that Source of Light has at its disposal. In fact, Billy and I were talking today about some of the various tools that Source of Light's been developing. We have everything from children's pre-evangelistic material all the way through adult discipleship curriculum, as well as Bible college curriculum. And it is now in printed form, it is in Braille, and they're all available online. Whether we like it or not, online is a new way. And in some situations, I was just last week at Luther Rice Seminary. Some of you familiar with Luther Rice? They are all online. They have one track, and that's their doctoral program that students come to campus. Otherwise, they're all entirely online right now. And it's going to be an increasing trend. Well, it's interesting because Source of Light was doing it remotely before most of the rest of the world was. But we were ready for COVID. Everybody else was just having to get caught up to Source of Light. Anyway, so we have all of these different methodology for delivery, and you can see. I'll just quickly go through. Some of you are familiar with it. Some of you in your camp ministry are using it. Some of you have developed some of your own curriculum. One of the things, we're not out there to try to win people over on our material necessarily, saying that ours is somehow superior. If you have something, for whatever age group, for whatever, stage in life, then by all means, I encourage you to utilize tools that are at your disposal. But if you don't have tools, this is an excellent way to be able to have access to courses that you don't have to go out and reinvent the wheel. I remember when I was young in ministry, I thought, oh man, surely I will have something to say in my writing that someone else hasn't said before, right? Don't be so naive. You guys are older, and so you get that. But I sure was glad when I started just to use what was out there. I was really glad that I could focus more of my energy on church planting. But anyway, one of the SLM tools that I mentioned was our Bible college curriculum. And if some of you are looking for or know someone that's looking to maybe join even in your organization and you're like, man, they could really use a little bit more Bible training, then our WWBI program is an excellent opportunity. Some of you are already using it. But one of the things we're discovering within certain ministries, mission agencies in particular, is they're requiring some more Bible education than the average student, the average person that's coming to them later in life has had in training. And so now they're like, man, do we make them go back to school? They do. They really should have another layer of Bible training than they have. But man, are they going to take out a loan to do it? And let me just tell you, this curriculum is, it's not meant for Source of Light to get rich, all right? It is at our cost. It is to cover our expenses, all right? We're not a Bible college trying to support a staff or a Bible college, or to say we have this big school or something. We just want to provide resources and tools for people to be more effective in ministry and to make disciples. And so if you know someone that needs to use it, they can either go online or they can contact us and they can find out. We have 6,000 students around the world. Current students, 6,000. And if you have any questions, you can stop by, talk to Ben or me. In particular, my wife is the one that runs it. I'll just go through it since I have 3 more minutes. I'm going to steal from Ben apparently. But you can, if you have more questions, I'll actually let you run by and look at some of these. We actually have 2 institute level systems. And I'm going to go ahead and let Ben kind of come up, make his way on up here. Just some things you might want to know about Source of Light from our 2023 report. First of all, we had 61,520 decisions for Christ. Okay, that was not a raised hand. Okay, those are people that started in the discipling relationship. They made a decision through the courses, and they wrote into or handed into a discipler or teacher or something like that. And they made a decision using the curriculum. This is just the curriculum, not how many people got saved in our churches or anything like that. We don't keep track of that. This is someone that wrote their name, Jimmy Smith. I made a decision, and I want to start in a discipling relationship with the curriculum with one of your people. So 61,129. Man, what is wrong with that screen right there? The number of new villages. We know the Great Commission won't be fulfilled until we go into every tribe and every tongue. And so 1,929 new villages, 272 new house groups, 256 new Bible studies, and 49 new churches. That's Source of Light. And I don't tell you that to say that to be proud about it, even though I am extremely proud of our missionaries. I hope it's a way for you to understand that Source of Light is utilizing the resources as a way for us to open doors. And that 61,000, I have a lot of people, pastors, heads of other organizations come to me, how is that even possible? But that's not a raised hand. If you want, I can provide names. And so I'm extremely proud that Source of Light is focused on this, but we have been focused on developing some new things. And so Ben, not only my son-in-law, but our director of Next Generation Ministries, is going to kind of share some of the new things that we've been developing at Source of Light.
Well, Phil, you messed up by giving 2 long-winded people a short amount of time. Just kidding. I won't take up a lot of time, but I want to quickly tell you about some of the new resources that Ron was just mentioning. If you have been familiar with the Source of Light materials, you'll be excited to know that we have some new stuff coming out. The first one that you see here would be some children's lessons that are coming out. And very soon there will be different age groups that will be coming out. We have 3 to 5-year-old lessons, 6 to 8-year-olds, 9 to 11, and then 12 to 14 middle school, high school age groups. Those will be rolling out very soon, but this is a new focus for Source of Light, is having someone, I guess I'm that person, to really focus in on the children and the youth internationally, connecting ministries like Sudan with with materials, or local churches with materials to reach children. The new lessons are very soon coming out. Another thing that we have is a Sunday school curriculum. We have written a 2-year Sunday school curriculum. What's really cool about the Sunday school curriculum is that it is a chronological thing. So lesson 1, you're going to be really starting out in Genesis 1. And then as you go through the 2 years, you'll have gone through the whole Bible. So it's a 2 years chronological Sunday school curriculum. This is actually going to be a free resource. This isn't a resource that we print, because at Source of Light we do have a really big print shop that we print all of our lessons, but the Sunday school materials is not printed. It'll actually just be on our website, and then churches and Sunday school teachers can go on our website, print as many copies as they would need. It's just a 1-page, so there's a little activity on it, and it's free. So you can just go on the website. If you have 20 students in your class, print off 20 pages, they have the lesson all for free right there, which is great, right? People don't have to pay for this. It's already up on the website. You can photocopy or just use one copy, whatever it is. It's there. We just want to give you the resources and the tools for churches to communicate the gospel for children.
Hey, Ben?
Yes?
Is that just one age group or is there several?
So the Sunday school curriculum is for children, and I wouldn't say that it has a specific age group, but a generalized children's material would be a good way to put it. Maybe up until elementary age is probably the best age group for it. It is basic enough that a child will understand, but it's not too childish, if that makes sense.
And also, at some point, there will be corresponding adult courses.
Right. So, as I mentioned on the previous slide, children's lessons. This is just the first phase right now. It's going to be children. We will be working our way through, but right now children, and also with the children's Sunday school materials, this is ready as well. The new thing also is called a book called 99 Adventures. A friend of ours named Jim Cook wrote this book. This is 99 Bible lessons, key Bible lessons from Genesis all the way to Revelation, also chronological. And this is one book meant for just the teacher to have. All right? So if you know the Source of Light materials, every student gets the book and they go through it. This book is very different, that only the teacher has, and they will teach it to their class. So Jim Cook wrote this. It is currently in 14 different languages, and it is hopefully going to be in 17 languages by the end of the year. But this book it's really beneficial for, say, areas where people don't know how to read, right? That's something we had to consider with Source of Light lessons. How could someone actually go through our lesson if they can't read? And so this could also be a good use for a teacher to be able to teach to their Sunday school class, to cover that base as well. This is, again, kind of going off the question that you asked, this is good for children of pretty much all ages, I would say. It's just a very good material that we actually, we do a really deep training on this, actually. So I've been a part of 2 trainings so far. Actually, both of them were in Costa Rica. We will be going to India in December, and we'll be training potentially 100 Sunday school teachers on how to use this curriculum. And it's probably a 30-hour training session on how to use this curriculum. One, so that they really learn this material, how to teach it, but also the statistic of how many people that are in ministry that have no ministry experience or training is pretty staggering. And so, part of it is to equip teachers on how to do ministry, specifically for children, and then giving them a really good resource to do that ministry. So, I guess my time is up, but I just wanted to show you these 3 new things that are coming through the pipeline at Source of Light that we're really excited about. And actually, Dan, I'm going to call on Dan. I'm just kidding, I'm not calling on Dan. But Dan works on a print shop, and so he will be, working on printing a lot of these, especially the new kids lessons that we talked about. And so Dan is going to be heavily involved in the printing of that material. So, any questions?
Yeah,
of course.
So is that Sunday school lesson available now on your website, or do I have to make it?
The Sunday school, it's on the website, right? So it's already up. I know year 1 is for sure on our website, and year 2 should be up by, I think the plan was January of 2025. So year one of the Sunday school curriculum is on our website right now already.
Point out the kids.
Yes. Let's see. Okay, so up here you will see we had an intern from Liberty University create a new website for us called slmkids.org. And that is going to be a resource that we are going to be beefing up and putting a lot of additional resources as well as our kids' materials. The 99 Adventures is definitely a tool that we'll have up there, the Sunday school stuff. And then, other materials that, say if they go through a book about creation, and our book is only 32 pages long, but there is so much more to be said about creation than what we can fit in a book. We want to have those resources available on our website where you could go and get more, information about a certain topic, whether it be creation or whatever. But slmkids.org is going to be a resource that we are really going to, heavily use as well, going on in the future with activities and lessons and other things like that.
That's where the SLM Kids is where you can find the children's lessons at this point.
The Sunday school. All right. Any other questions about Source of Light? All right. Okay. So I think, Phil, is it fine if I go ahead and transition us over into? All right. 5 o'clock supper. We have free time until then. If you signed up for something, you can go have some fun. You want me to pray us out? All right, let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for our sessions and the discussions that we've had. God, I pray that it be beneficial for each one of us to build relationships and to be in your word and to praise you. God, thank you so much that we could all be here today and to spend time with each other. Watch over us as we go our ways. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.